What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at England versus Germany in the Euros round of 16. England progressed into the quarterfinals with a score of 2-0 against Germany. Germany's knocked out. And before we start, check out my book. There's a link in the description below, so be sure to check that out right now. But let's get right into the video. So Germany went with a back three, and they're both defense and offensive phases of the game. Their double pivot between Goretzka and Toni Kroos. And then from here, they went with a narrow front three of Thomas Muller, Kai Havertz, and Timo Werner, which we just see Thomas Muller and Kai Havertz off the screen here, with Timo Werner stretching the England back line to threaten in behind. England went with a bit of a change of shape here, but it worked out very well for them. Saka played on the right side, Kane through the center, and Sterling on the left. Then from here, the double pivot of England was Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips. So each team played very similarly in terms of their structure on paper, but this would become very different, as one of the key differences was with the front three occupied. Now the front three of Germany played much more narrow than England, and England played differently in the defensive phase, as they went with the 5-2-3 and then a 5-4-1, as Germany did not. Germany also staggered their double pivot and favored getting Toni Kroos on the ball in the half spaces much more. So here in Germany's build-up, we have our 5-2-3 and the double pivot of England. In this phase, they played pretty space-oriented, oftentimes jumping to the double pivot of Germany to shut down the first line passing options and any chance Germany would have to break through central corridors. And they defended very brave in their back five, giving them the versatility to jump into areas of danger to then prevent progression between the lines, especially in the half space from the narrow front three of Germany. England went with a straight back five and playing three central defenders, with Luke Shaw and Trippier in the wide areas as the fullbacks. And now we can see the narrow front three of Germany with Timo Werner stretching in behind, and then both the wingers favoring the half space, or even more narrow than this, playing about 20 yards apart, with then Goretzka and Toni Kroos as the double pivot. But again, Toni Kroos favoring the left side, which could then increase the distance between the double pivot and create weaker connections between the two midfielders of Germany. Their back three, just like England, played with this out-and-out back three, oftentimes going with single width in the wide areas. The front three from England worked very well because of the cover of the double pivot being able to jump into positions like we just saw on the tactical board, but now Declan Rice being able to gain access to Goretzka and Toni Kroos in an inefficient area, so his influence is very limited in positions like this. And with the front three of England, they can step up and press each of the three central defenders, often forcing them to play back to their goalkeeper, as we see here. So in this jumping, it became very hard for Germany to then find their free player or generate a free player through their holding midfield position in between the lines. When England played in their mid-block, they had the situation of how to adequately cover the holding midfielder of Germany, as well as the inverted winger or advanced midfielder of Germany at the same time. So these two players for Germany were dangerous, but England was able to solve it by creating vertical partnerships between the wide central defender, who would often jump, allowing the movement of the holding midfielder to then jump to the German holding midfielder, allowing the front three to then press, all starting with the wide center back's ability to jump into this area and have the cover from his most central defender. Now what happened? Now one danger from this is the Timo Werner run in behind because of the jumping central defenders leaving space, but Timo Werner didn't make very many runs in behind or wasn't found very much. Here's another picture of England defending very brave, which I thought worked out very well for them. Individually they defended very well, and then as a group collectively they did even better. So the two holding midfielders And now our front three, we have our 5-3-2. And by being brave in the defensive phase is when Germany were in possession and they had runners going back towards the ball. The central defenders weren't afraid to jump into higher positions and defending with numerical equality at the back. So each of the three central defenders are occupied by a German player here. The two holding midfielders are, and now the front three are tasked with pressing the first line of build-up of Germany, as well as shifting into wide areas and maintaining spatial control over the central three corridors. So in being brave, they conceded more space in behind, but this wasn't accessed very much by Germany, which led them secure. And the defenders, the central defenders especially, were always on the ball side or goal side, depending on where on the field they were. So they defended very well and didn't allow the German players to create positional superiority against them and progress in behind with a direct pass. When Germany moved higher up the field, England switched from a 5-2-3 to a 5-4-1, which is a very easy transition, just dropping the outside midfielders or the wingers in line or in the same defensive line as their holding midfielder, leaving then Kane as the lone forward up top. This gave them a high level of spatial control between the lines, which often tried to get the German players to either make runs in behind with chipped passes or runs deeper in the first and second line, giving them the space in front of the block but not being very dangerous. The German rest defense consisted of their three central defenders, staggering their width and which corridor they played in, as well as their double pivot, often playing more towards the left because of Toni Kroos's favoring of the left half space in the build-up. When England were in possession, they went with a bit different structure. They went with their three central defenders. Their double pivot played very staggered at times, often sending Declan Rice in this game higher up the field, but him and Calvin Phillips would interchange their role, on one being the holding midfielder and one playing a little bit more advanced, or they would then just both be a double pivot. They then went with Saka, Kane, and Sterling higher up the field, which gave them pace in behind and put players around Kane who were willing to run in behind, allowing him to have more space when he would drop deeper, or they would just go with two inverted wingers between the lines, similar to how Germany did, but using more interchanges and more overloads in these situations to try and free up movement. Oftentimes, progression would also come from the wide central defenders of England that would progress around the first or second line of the German defensive block, and then they would attract pressure from a deeper defensive line, creating then more dangerous space in advanced areas. Germany looked to control this with a 5-3-2, which allowed England to take advantage of their narrow positioning in the first and second line and allow the center defenders to drive through the half space and progress past the two forwards. So as we see here from the last picture, we have our three central defenders with the two wide defenders playing one in the wide area and one in the half space, but playing the exterior part of the half space, giving them good distance from the German two central forwards, and having Declan Rice be almost like a pinning player, positioning himself between the two central forwards, affecting their movement and giving more space on the ball to the wide central defenders. So here we have England protected by the double pivot, giving their wide central defender more freedom to drive into the half space and look to commit German defenders in the second line of pressure, drawing out midfielders and trying to get space in between the lines for Harry Kane here. As we see Harry Kane looking to drop deeper towards the ball, looking to drop between defenders to then create space or access space, with then Saka being the player who's pinning the wide central defender from jumping with Kane or giving him an option between the lines with the fullback of Trippier. So here we have the three central defenders of England progressing through the wide central defender, the double pivot, giving them security, allowing the central defender to be more aggressive when he receives the ball, to dribble through the half space and progress. And now we have a mutual help space that forms a match like Rondo situation with four players, a first line passing option, third line passing option, and a second line passing option to go around the defensive block if necessary, but these are all made possible from the players overloading the space between the lines, allowing Kane to then have more freedom to drop into these advanced positions and look to get on the ball and then play players running in behind or play progressive passes. So with England's rest defense, having the 3 central defenders gave them numerical superiority against the 2 German lone forwards. The double pivot also gave them good rest defense to block any outlet passes attempted by Germany, and using these cover shadows to stop the supply in transition of the German players, while Germany played in a 5-3-2 when they had to defend deep in their own low block. And then at the end of the day, England took the chances they had, and Germany missed a few big ones that you wouldn't expect from their experienced players. But that wraps up the analysis, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.